Hello YouTube, welcome to Meet the Booru. I'm Weggies, joined today by co-host Takenoko.
Hello.
Today we have a very special guest and a longtime contributor, Fillialcacophony. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we usually start off with some self-promotion. Would you like to share your Tumblr link with us today?
My Tumblr link is basically just my name at Tumblr. It's fillialcacophony.tumblr.com, so it's Fill. I don't even know how to spell it.
We'll have a link. We'll put it in the...
Fillialcacophony. I type it more often than I spell it out, so my fingers know it better than my mind does.
There you go. We'll also have a link in the video description for those on mobile as well. So Tak, would you like to start us off today?
Alrighty then. So, Phil, in this interview series, we usually start with the origin and meaning of your Booru name, in this case, filial cacophony. Yours is a compound word. Would you mind telling us what it means?
All right, yeah. As you said, it's a compound word, and it's just a mixture of different things, and it's purposely misspelled for part of it. It's filial, which is related to filial, Filial, which is basically just a root word pertaining to children, or biologically, it's pertaining to a generation after the parents. So keep that in mind, children. It's misspelled with two L's on purpose, so it's supposed to kind of reminisce filly, as in like a small, like a child female horse, I guess you'd call it. So children, childlike horses. Cacophony is obviously just a word that describes lots of noise, loudness, screaming, potentially any kind of thing that's just an eruption of sudden sound. So you've got an eruption of sudden sound pertaining to small child-like baby horse thingies. And that's pretty appropriate for Fluffy Pony. That's all I can say about that.
Very appropriate. So let's get some information about you. What country do you live in?
I live in America, in the American part of America.
In Cheeseburgerville.
Yes, I breathe in just bacon and I exhale cheeseburgers and I use pizza to clean myself on a daily basis.
So, are you currently attending university or taking any classes or anything?
I'm doing some part-time graduate studies while I'm working to get my master's degree. Be fun. Be over soon, and I can't wait because even if it's part-time stuff, it does kind of dig into your free time, and I'm looking forward to slacking off.
Slacking off for more pony.
Slacking off and whacking off.
Oh, baby. So, about how old are you?
I am 27 as of last March.
Ooh, a March baby.
Ah.
Oh,
Someone will have your sign by 5 minutes later.
oh
Messaging
God.
you.
I just feel like we're so compatible. I just want to like touch you and see how many babies we can have before you give up on me. Oh God.
Tak?
So, yeah.
Thinking about Phil's babies over there?
Don't,
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
don't think about it too long. They're going to be ugly.
Oh, God. No. Not talking about babies at all. Let's go on to your favorite stuffs. What's your favorite food?
Babies and more babies.
Oh,
If we were to ask any of the Fluffcast members and people familiar with that strange world of headcanon, my favorite food would have to be chicken soup, because apparently that's all I live on. I actually really do like making my own food because I live in an apartment by myself, so it's kind of one of those things you do. You make food, you throw it in some bags, and you eat it for the rest of the week. And yes, chicken soup does happen. And yes, oftentimes in these Skype calls, I will be making food just because it happens to be around dinner time. So, in the minds of everyone I talk to on Skype, I am constantly making and eating food.
Sounds like a typical American.
Exactly. And I eat babies, apparently, too.
Well, if you could only eat one thing for the next year, what would it be?
Oh, God. Now, assuming there's no negative health repercussions, I would probably say some kind of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. The real problem is I know I would get sick of it and then try to find some way to kill myself. But yeah, I had some Ben and Jerry's ice cream this last week. It was the what was it called? The red velvet stuff. It was pretty good.
Oh,
Red velvet
Other
cake.
other fine brands of ice cream are available.
Oh my.
Ooh.
Can we just like take a moment to just imagine just bathing in ice cream for a while? Oh God. Okay, I'm a little bit too aroused. Let's move this along.
all right. So, pertaining to movies, do you have a particular genre of movies that you like?
In particular, my favorite genre of movie in general is comedy, because I'm not a very serious person. I'll enjoy a drama or an action movie or a thriller, horror movie, period pieces, basically anything that's well done. I really like it when people put solid effort into it. I'm not I'm not as huge a fan of like blockbusters. I'm not crazy about the Lord of the Rings movies or all these Marvel movies that are coming up, but I'll watch them with people if I can enjoy it. But yeah, for the most part, if it can make me laugh and I can genuinely just enjoy myself during the movie and I'm with people who like it, I'll watch it.
Cool. So do you have a favorite movie then, or actor?
Oh God. I probably I don't really care too much about like particular actors because I'm well aware that some actors are, it just depends on what movie they're in and how they're portraying things as far as performance goes. I've probably most recently one of my favorite movies was Hot Fuzz, just because I was watching that again and just enjoying all like the little callback jokes. So yeah, Hot Fuzz definitely fits in there. And favorite actor could be just about anybody, so it's not much there.
Yeah, Simon Pegg's a pretty good comedian.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy his
Of course
movies.
he is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Moving on to music. I know a lot of people have probably heard in various streams a bit of strumming coming from your end. Are you
Oh.
musically talented?
I am musically inclined, which means I try to push myself towards the music. That does not necessarily carry over into musical giftedness. I do, however, have the interest enough to have learned a few things. Like, I play the guitar, both electric and acoustic, and I have a bass that I kind of suck at. I have a keyboard that I got as a MIDI controller, which I'm still trying to figure out how to use. And I played the drums in the past, but don't live in a place that I can own a drum set. And I think electric drums are the devil, so there's no way that's happening.
The devil.
Just trust me. I've had bad experiences with them. I would literally rather get like a bunch of 5-gallon buckets and beat the ends of them than I would go and get some trigger pads.
There's some
It's just
talented street performers out there that do that kind of stuff.
absolutely, and I feel like I've missed my calling.
So you mentioned the MIDI controller. Do you enjoy playing the piano, or is it something specific?
I've been getting into basic orchestration and putting together arrangements. It's not something that I'm nearly far along enough to like create a band camp or anything like that for. I know some people who will make like ambient music and produce things and make stuff that's like, oh, it's not nice and beautiful. I'm kind of clumsy as far as it comes to the keyboard. I know how to put together basic chords and small lead lines, but I really just kind of wish there were strings on it so I could strum it like a guitar, because it's either that or I start hitting against a wall and say, oh, that beat sounded good.
Just strumming the drums.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to bring talent into it per se, but in terms of just instruments you like messing around with or playing, what kind of instruments do you like to mess with?
Mostly acoustic guitar, just because it's the easiest thing to play. You don't have to plug it into anything, and you can just sit there and strum at it. I've been in Skype calls with people in the past where I've been the guy strumming it, and I understand that it's a bit annoying, so I've stopped. And maybe other people who might listen to this might want to stop as well. I'm not sure.
Not pointing any fingers or naming any names.
Absolutely not. You know who you are.
So when you're listening to music, do you have a preference on what you listen to?
Depends on what I'm doing. If I'm trying to compose something, like actually write something down, like try to put together strings of thought, like a story or write a report or things, I can't listen to anything that's too complicated or distracting. So I can't listen to anything that's like heavy vocally or heavy dialogue. So I'll mostly listen to like ambient, like EDM style music, or even just random instrumental stuff. But if I'm doing something that's simple to me, that it doesn't take a lot of the front end of my brain to work on, I'll just listen to pretty much anything. In my streams that I've done for the Booru, I'll often just throw together a huge playlist on iTunes and just roll with it. It's a good time.
Cool, cool.
Yeah. Do you have any specific artists or anything that you like to listen to?
Oh yeah. As always, everything's conditional for me. I'm like trying to nail down like a piece of Jello to the wall, so it's hard to get like a solid answer out of me. But as of right now, a lot of the stuff that I like to listen to is, I don't know, semi melodic, semi melancholy, so stuff like the XX, Naked and Famous, Active Child, things that are kind of moody. I don't know. It's nice. A lot of layering.
Alrighty, what about some other fun things like video games? Are you part of the PC gaming master race, or are you a console peasant?
Indeed, I am part of the PC master race, but that's almost not even a conscious choice, because I don't actually own any consoles. Like back in the day, I owned an NES and an Atari, and then we skipped to a PS1, and then I've never actually owned anything since. Like I've had brothers who've owned like a 360 or things like that, but I never really got into them. So it's like, hey, look, I'm playing Mario. Hey, look, I'm playing Dig Dug. Hey, look, I'm playing Tomb Raider and Halo 1, and that's it. As far as like gaming goes these days, I pretty much just play like Fallout 3 and Skyrim if I'm by myself, or things like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress if I'm with other people.
So, what kind of genres do you like? You just mentioned some FPSs and some open world games.
I like building stuff, so sometimes I'll jump into Minecraft, but for the most part, I really like team-based work. So yeah, if it's a first-person shooter, I'll go out there and do it. But if I'm by myself and I really want to dive into it, I really do like the open world stuff that Bethesda has. So I'm hoping someday they might release a Fallout 4, and I'm probably going to get New Vegas anytime soon.
Someday.
Just
Maybe.
wait for the next Steam sale.
But that's pretty much how it's been.
Give Gavin all our money.
I mean, he's going to get it all anyways, so he might as well drag the process out so we can at least pretend we have free will and the ability to resist it.
So your Skype avatar is a Pikachu. Your Boo personality is that of an angry Pika, working for Funkshire. So is Pokemon your favorite game there?
Pokemon is definitely a game that I have some history with. It's, I guess you'd call it the first quote-unquote anime that I ever saw. So this is back in the day when I'd get home from doing the paper route and it was on. I really liked playing Blue. I only ever really kept up with things up to the 3rd gen, so I can't really say too much to the youngsters who got their newfangled Mega Evolutions and such. But also some of my exposure into the internet got me involved with Something Awful, and one of the threads in Something Awful had a blank Pikachu face, and from that's where I actually got the Angry Chew, which Aichi has just turned into some strangeness.
Oh, yeah. So, speaking of Pokemon, which one is your favorite?
Back in the day, first game, and based on the cards, was Mr. Mime. He's probably shit tier in the current games because they don't do very good in updating, the first gens into the future ones, but it's not really a problem of mine because I don't really play them.
Sounds like shots fired to me.
Well, I mean, I I don't really have the interest to actually go in there and discuss this with people who are current fans. So they can be fans. Let them go have fun with their things. I'm having fun with my outdated stuff.
So do you have a favorite one that you use in the game?
Absolutely. As I said, the ones that I kept up with were Gen 3. So probably my favorite one from Gen 3, and the one that I'd like to use when all the availabilities were put in, was Flygon. I just really liked his type setup. I liked his move base, and I liked his abilities. Really cool stuff. He's immune to a lot of things.
Oh, that's definitely helpful.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So, moving on a bit, what do you like to do on the internet? I mean, I know that's kind of a big question. Like, are there any websites that you like to frequent?
Well, as I mentioned before, Something Awful is a good one. Things like 4chan are kind of an inevitability in the fluffy world. I mean, we'll probably discuss it later, but there were some pony ones that I had visited in the past with a little bit more frequency. And porn, obviously porn. Lots of porn.
Well, the internet is for porn, so.
Well, I mean, all roads lead to porn, so you might as well just throw that in there as just a general, 60% of my viewing.
What other hobbies do you have? Do you enjoy playing any sports?
I do. I take part in like intramural and pick up versions of soccer and basketball sometimes. I play flag football every now and then, which is always a little bit more physical than it should be for flag football. I mean, it's just flag football. You shouldn't be getting injured, but people still hurt themselves for some reason. I'm surrounded by a lot of really dumb people down here. Oh well.
And what about biking?
Absolutely. I live in an area where traffic can become a serious problem, especially if you're trying to jump on the highway or things like that. So I try to bike as much as I can, which is nice because I just pretty much just use a mountain bike, get out there, hit the trails if I have to. Mostly just getting around town, though. It's nice. Really enjoy it. Saves on gas.
Saves on gas, yeah.
Absolutely.
Can be a killer these days.
Yeah, it's.
So let's move on to some pony stuff. How did you originally get involved with My Little Pony Friendship is Magic?
So first off, background: I never played with or was really exposed to My Little Pony other than seeing like, I don't know, commercials or something for it back in the day. My older sister was never really into it, so I don't know. I never even had like secondhand contact with it. As far as getting or becoming aware with the current stuff, it was mostly just like people that I knew from college got into it and were posting jokes about it. At the same time, I'd been viewing things like meme boards and 4chan and I Can Has Cheeseburger and all those weird like memeing sites, and a lot of pony stuff was popping around. So this was back in 2011, so I obviously wasn't an early adopter, but I decided to check it out and found it interesting enough. I don't know. I got into watching it and just became a habit. And it was interesting to see what people made out of it too.
Mm-hmm. Do you still watch the show at all?
Yeah, it's something that I used to do on Saturday mornings. And granted, it's not showing right now. I probably still will. I don't have nearly as much gusto as I did when I first found it, which is pretty typical in any fandom. But yeah, I do it just, I guess, out of sentimentality's sake, and maybe even trying to keep up with what they're doing with it as far as canon goes. But yeah, it's still there on Saturday mornings.
In that case, I think you'll be qualified to answer this next question. Who is best pony?
As political and as divisive as that question goes, I'll throw in Applejack because it's just how I roll. Other people might toss their hat towards various backgrounds or OCs or other main six stuff. I'll just go with something simple. I can't say that I'm.
That was an odd way for sounding out Luna.
Yeah, I know, right? I got the accent wrong. Total wrong number of syllables too. I got to work on that.
Well,
So, do
you
you have
live.
any other honorable mentions? Maybe an OC or even another show pony?
Mhm.
Just for the sake of appeasing Bosnia, I'll throw in Little Pip or Blackjack from the FOE group, which is Fallout Equestria. It's a different world altogether.
Mhm.
Alrighty. Do you have any favorite songs, either from the show or from the community fan made?
As far as I know that there's some very creative people out there who make stuff. Don't really know what all their names are, and I can't say that I've dived really headfirst into them. I'm aware of some of them, so pretty much anything that the Friendship is Witchcraft group makes, something like Pinky's Brew or things like that, those are always fun and catchy, but not to the point where I have them, on my phone or listening to in my car. It's good stuff, but I'm not that into it.
Hmm. Well, moving on a little, how did you find your way to Fluffy Buru? Or to Fluffy Pony, I should say.
Well, this is where things start getting a little strange because it's based on how I went from regular MLP stuff to looking at the offshoots. So offshoots in my world would be from things like the fan fiction stuff. As I mentioned, I've read Fallout Equestria stuff, so I had some interest in Film Fiction, which is that site that hosts all the strangeness. And I started finding stories which were a bit repulsive at the beginning, but they're stories based on quote unquote pony abuse. Now, I, I'm a pretty peaceful person, and I'm also don't really show any of this stuff in real life, so it was interesting and repulsive at the same time, kind of like, staring at a car accident. It's gross, you're horrified that somebody would make it, but at the same time you're intrigued. So from that stuff, I started looking up in Google pony abuse. This is where I started finding stories from Makelore, and I found the comics from M. Wyke and stories from Giant Neckbeard. And this is where I was introduced to Pony Buru, which was the old site for it, and 4chan slash MLP boards, which is where we used to have their threads. And I lurked for a while back in March of 2012, late March, early April.
So then after that, you became a name.
I as I said, in my birthday's in March, so I actually got a tablet for my birthday, and that's when I decided, oh, I can, play around with learning how to draw, because I've always drawn stuff. I'm not very good at it, but I've always liked drawing. Getting to know the fluffy stuff that people were posting on 4chan and seeing the commentary that people had, they weren't really saying, oh, this is shitty art. They were always saying, you could have eviscerated it this way, or I would rather have seen more blood, or there should be more tears. The mama needs to be even more upset that its babies are being put into a blender. So there's just all sorts of. It was just, interesting because I had just come from looking at the pony world where there's a lot of really talented artists and people complain about stupid things like my OC doesn't look like that, or how could you do this to my waifu. So now I see Fluffy Pony where people are basically just like, oh, this is a pony and it's in a deli slicer, and it's just like, this is a shitty piece of art that you put together in MS Paint and everyone loves it. So that led me to the understanding, which was I don't have to be good at art to contribute to this, and I could do something like that. I was learning how to do GIFs, so I figured I'd throw some of those out there too. And I saw the formula, saw the way that people were putting together, and I understood some of the headcanon from the stories that I read, and just decided to go for it. So that's where I created a name, and that's when I started posting stuff under the name Fillialcacophony on 4chan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, out of Fluffy Pony content on the Buru, is there a specific genre or type that you like to look at or read?
Well, that kind of comes back to what drew me to Fluffy Pony in the first place, which was abuse and gore and pain, because it was just something that was weird. It intrigued me. I was interested in it. I was interested in exploring, I guess you'd call, the darker side of my humor. So I've always had a soft spot for abuse, especially abuse that works humor into it. Granted, I've gotten a little more tame since then, so really, my favorite stuff is just anything that's funny. Could be Hugbox, as long as it's funny. Weird Box, which is almost always funny. Sad Box, we can all laugh at that anyways. They, you know what I mean? Like, as long as people are putting like good effort into it and they're being clever. Like, some of my favorite pictures in the old days were shit edits where it wasn't much effort, but you could tell that they thought about it. And thinking about what you're putting on always helps. In the end, we're all pretty awful.
We're all awful people. Thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna go cut my wrists.
Across the road for attention, down the street for results.
So where do you think the fluffy culture stands in relation to Friendship is Magic?
I would have to say that, first off, I wasn't there at the beginning, so I can't speak to it solidly. I've dug into a little bit of the history, talked to people who were there at the very beginning, and seen some of the stuff posted from the people who have long since abandoned the world. I'd say that at this point, though, it's pretty... it was once tied to MLP, but now it's kind of been divorced. It's created so much of its own content that all the in-jokes aren't really MLP related, and we're getting people who are joining the site and joining the fandom who've never even really looked into MLP stuff. So things like B threads and other strangeness.
Well, there's ponies all over B anyway.
Absolutely. But there's a lot of really awful things on B that we try to forget.
Where's the brain bleach? So speaking of brain bleach, let's move on to some fluffy pony headcanon stuff.
That's a good segue right there.
Yeah. So you don't exactly follow any specific headcanon as you just kind of draw whatever. Is there do you want to like tell us about that?
As far as I'm concerned, your headcanon could be whatever you want it to be for your story. You can be as rigid as you want in it. I just feel like it restricts creativity. I can't think of an internally consistent fluffy headcanon that would allow me to draw a fluffy blimp or a fluffy whose legs are replaced with giant thumbs. It's funny to me, but it doesn't make sense in the long run. I subscribe to like vague, basic headcanons, like things like has bio and the purpose of all that, and I think some stories have probably influenced me one way or another, but I can't even... I have very little consistency between the drawings that I make, let alone between the general community. So I say, have your ideas and enjoy them, but make sure that they're not, restricting you from making something fun.
Yeah, if you're making a comedy picture, though, it doesn't necessarily have to follow anything specific.
Which is probably why I've basically been making only comedy pictures for a while.
Alrighty. Aside from your disclaimer about not having one, you mentioned that you find you follow a few specific things. Is there anything you find enjoyable, maybe about other people's headcanon, or?
Oh yeah. It doesn't have to always pop in, and as I said, I'll enjoy it but not necessarily always implement it. Sometimes I think it's funny to look at what Mayclore did with fluffy mamas and how they acted while they were pregnant and the way they reacted to their babies. He always had good stuff with his breeder stories. Even Deathproof. Deathproof had a kind of silly one where if a fluffy wasn't saying its own name, it was lying. It's fun to think about. It doesn't have to be something that you hold hard to. Even things like one of Nasser's stories where there was a bunch of water-headed fluffies that were treating an alicorn like a princess. That's just goofy, and I love it. Basically just weird ideas where you can tie something strange in together, and it doesn't have to completely impact the outcome of the story, but they're just silly little world building things. They're fun, and they don't restrict you to too much. It's just something funny to notice. I like them.
So how do you feel about some of the fluffy pony tropes per se, like fluffy ponies drowning, or I don't know, stuff like that, derpy fluffs and all that. Mamas thinking that their foals are just kind of toys.
Or fluffies, claiming that they're alive, or being bio toys, or yeah. Um, I, I think some of them can be a bit tiring just to look at, because if you look at a lot of older stories, you'll see, oh, Fluffy Pony drowned. Oh, Fluffy Pony drowned. That's a little tired these days because, I mean, you could end just about any story with Fluffy Pony drowned. I would rather people just, like, I don't know, find a little bit more inventive ways of doing it, or even have, like, the Fluffy Pony drowned in oxygen or something strange like that. But I always, I mean, like, if you look at like a really common abuser trope, where like a yard invasion, like fluffies are trying to take someone's yard, so it's like, oh shit, they're gonna take my yard, better abuse them. It's self-defense. Oh my god. Um, those don't really take much imagination to tell what's going on. I like those stories when they go completely, like, they take something out of left field. But as I said before, I really like strange stuff. So, like, there's the common story where, like, a feral will break into your yard and knock up the mare that you have, and then, she'll have babies, and that whole drama, goes off. Why not have it so that the mare, like, doesn't get knocked up, but just starts filling with helium a little bit every day to day, and for some reason it just floats off one day. It doesn't make much sense, but it could turn into something silly. And honestly, I would really rather just leave a story laughing than, like, having a quote-unquote murder boner.
Artie, how do you feel about some of the spin-off fluffies or the subtypes?
I absolutely love them. Like little cotton fluffs and the garden fluffies, cow fluffies, sea fluffies. I think they're great. I think they add little dimensions of hug boxability and abusability and all sorts of different, like, weird quirks that you can add to them. And people are just going to keep making new ones as they come up with more ideas.
Crazy ass face Ben Affleck fluffies.
Absolutely. I remember when you posted that, and sent a little bit of a tingle in my schween.
Not all of our listeners may know this, but you are the originator of the ass-faced fluffies and the suey Neweggy babish.
It's true, and they can continue living without knowing that. It's not like I take a distinct sense of pride in being the inventor, quote unquote, of these things. But
he demands recognition.
This is the legacy of This is the legacy upon the world that you're leaving.
My silly no legacy. Yeah. Those are very silly ideas, and I anticipate other people coming up with even sillier, stranger ideas. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm surprised that I was the one who had to come up with them.
How time till Weggies?
I mean, come on, it's a fluffy with its ass for a face. This isn't rocket science. It just needs to be a thing. It became a thing. Let's do this.
What about some other fluffy related stuff, such as the very infamous Flufflepuff?
Oh boy. Back.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say back in, like, 2012, I actually followed Flufflepuff's Tumblr, so I was familiar with what Mixer Mike had been putting out. It's a little comedy Tumblr, and it's basically hug boxy stuff, but it's not Fluffy Pony. People can argue their definitions. I would say that it's an MLP style pony that just happens to be really fluffy, doesn't talk, and does really silly things with the other characters. Mixer Mike, however, I do kind of credit with some of the design of fluffy ponies, along with other of the artists from back in the day, like Art Anon and stuff. They put out some of the earliest content that actually made it visually, but it has since been very different, so I wouldn't even call it a fluffy pony at this point.
What do you think about the various OC non-fluffy characters on the Booru? like the infamous Noodles, or the Angry Chew that you've kind of spawned somehow, or Sinbad Pendleton.
So first off, um, I'd like to point this out that when I made that Pikachu picture, my Skype avatar, not only have I not changed it, I didn't pick it for the concept of it becoming a character. It was just a funny picture. it, as is stated here, like the Noodles, and all the other OC characters like Funkshire and Menthol and Komodo and all of them, they kind of became their own little their own little subgenre on the Booru, because of Aichi and his interesting imagination with silly stories. I myself, I don't really think that they necessarily count as fluffy content, at least by themselves. Aichi's actually posted a number of comics that are based on Fillialcacophony and those other things, but he posted those on his Tumblr, which just kind of stay there. And I think that's a pretty appropriate place to do it, because it's basically just a huge inside joke. I'm not a huge fan of them being on the Booru, but that's not really up for me to decide.
Alrighty. Um, some of the other things that kind of leading between OCs and this, I mean, you also have an OC as Truffle,
Oh god, Truffle.
as also one of the other, I guess, special contributions that you've made to the Booru, along with your ass-face fluffies and silly no weggy babbies. You also had your thumb fluffies.
Oh
Uh,
god.
Very recently, you did your hermit crab fluffies.
Yes.
Those were pretty enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you also had Dimple. Um,
Yes.
so for some of the newer users who may be coming to the fandom, do you want to tell us about Truffle?
Sure. Truffle is basically just a little brown fluffy whose fluff was drawn the way that I used to draw fluffies, where his entire body was the same color except for his face and his hooves. I since then kind of changed my style to the point where that their fluff was their entire face and their body, and their mane and tail were a different color. Truffle just kind of stayed the way he was, though. Also, because Truffle, in probably a majority of his pictures, just kept dying, the joke kind of came out that not only was he dying because of really, kind of silly situations, he was also not immortal, but capable of respawning. So he went through every painful death the way that any Fluffy would, but he just keeps respawning, and it often pisses people off because they're trying to get over it and done with it. So yeah, that's Truffle.
All right. So getting back to the Buru, when you're personally just kind of on the Buru looking at stuff, do you search for any specific tags?
When I'm on the Buru, the stuff that I most clearly search for are stories, because stories are the ones that get backlogged for me. So I'll often look up a particular author. So there's some really long stories like Abandoned Angel, or Sweet Apple Acres, or basically kind of like miniature epochs and or epics, and I don't really have the time to read them that I'd like. So sometimes when I'm going to the Bureau and I'm specifically looking for something, I'll look for a story because it's time to read and I really need to buckle down and get it out. Other than that, I just kind of browse. I look through the last 5 pages to see stuff that I haven't really seen before. It's much easier for me to take in artwork than it is stories, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast, and oftentimes I kind of either wait for a recommendation or look through recent comments to see what people are saying about the stories.
Alrighty. The Fluffy Buru does have a tag blocking system. Do you have any artists or users or specific tags blocked?
I don't, because I'd really rather not miss things, and I've either tangentially been involved in or I have seen some pretty awful stuff on the Buru, so I don't block anything. It's the same way with Derpy Buru. I don't block anything because a lot of times fluffy stuff will be phased out. Though I wouldn't suggest this to a lot of people because you will end up with a lot of horsecock. It's just a Jesus Christ.
That
There's a lot of
could be what
horsecock.
they're after.
I don't see the
I
problem here.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your thing, go to Derpy Baru and remove all the tags. But yeah, there's a lot of yeah cock.
Cack.
Okay.
Cack.
Are there any like
cock?
moving on from the cack? Are there any peoples who their arts or their stories? Is there anyone that you really look forward to seeing some uploads happening?
At any given time on the Burrow, I've always kind of looked forward to people who are in their active phase. So I kind of see it as you get into the fandom, and once you decided that you're going to start posting stuff, you have this sudden rush of interest and sudden rush of desire to actually put out content. Whether or not that lasts a long time or not is kind of dependent on the person, but it does kind of peter out over time to the point where they won't post nearly as much, with as much frequency. So, for example, I used to post a lot. I used to put a lot of effort into little animations and comics. I don't do it nearly as much just because I don't really have the interest to do it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the stuff that's put out by the people who are still kind of into that phase. So, like, recently we've been getting animated portions from Side View with his live action stuff with the plushes. Igor's been putting out some really good animations, which are just genius. I always look forward to what Bosnia has to put out, and then there's always some of the weird box stuff that like Kibbles puts out, and who knows what the hell Aichi's gonna draw. I basically look forward to whatever actually is on the Buru. I pretty much enjoy all of it, even the Anthro. That's fine. Keep doing it. It makes some great butthurt.
So, are there any concepts you'd like to see more of on the Buru?
Absolutely. Just in general, I really like stories that people write from a human point of view, just because I'm not really as interested in a fluffy, like, describing their emotions or, understanding what they're feeling or thinking. I often find it a little bit more funny or a little bit more relatable to see it from a human's point of view, and they're just seeing fluffies reacting to really strange things or running around and terror shitting themselves or, just various other stuff. I always like the human point of view stuff. So that's just my preference. I'll still read everything else anyways. As far as other like topics go, I'd really like it if people made more cow fluffies because those are always fun. I don't feel like we've fully exploited all the strangeness that can involve. And anytime we bring back like sea fluffies or fluffalo, that's always a plus. It shakes things up a little, it reminds people that those concepts still exist, and who the hell knows what's going to happen with Cacodemon fluffies and Metroid fluffies.
Well, that's why we have that question to inspire people to draw these things.
Are there any concepts that you'd just like to see no longer be part of the Buru? Just something you'd like to be completely wiped?
Honestly, I kind of see it as like the Buru, in its own way, kind of polices that by itself. If people really don't like a concept, they'll just shit on it. And if the person is trying to make stuff that he or she thinks other people will enjoy, they'll probably move on, unless they're being a shitlord and they're just trying to troll people. I myself don't really care too much. I'm not one for censorship on the Buru. I think I'd rather people be able to post more than less. And if it's something that I don't think I'm gonna read or look at, then I'll just ignore it and move on to something else. I'm kind of apathetic as far as that goes. So I can't say there's anything in particular that bothers me.
Alrighty. Are there any people who may have left the fandom or just stopped uploading content that you'd like to see come back?
Two that come to mind are Mayclore and Harbinger. They both wrote a lot of stories, and Harbinger did some really, really good artwork. And I know that Mayclore still posts fan fiction elsewhere for things like Gravity Falls. Harbinger just kind of fell off the face of the earth. They did some really good stuff that I really enjoyed, and obviously there's a bunch of other people I'm not really mentioning at this point, but we've seen a lot of people come back, so who knows? Maybe they'll come back too.
So, as our kind of final question here, what motivates you to create content for the Booru?
What motivates me is I have to want to draw something. So I have to actually have the time to be able to sit down and do it. It's not like 2 a.m. and I have to work the next day or things like that. Also, I have to have a good enough idea, something silly, something interesting, something I can actually accomplish. Unless I finish it in one sitting, it's hard for me to actually finish because the interest has to be there, and I kind of ride that wave of, participation. So basically, if somebody asks me to draw something, it's the same way with my Tumblr. I say to people, I'll draw the stuff that you suggest, but it has to interest me. I actually have to want to do it. So it can't just be like some silly throwaway gag that's been done a million times, hopefully. I can't say that my work is all brilliant, groundbreaking stuff. But still, I would hope that it would be something funny, something interesting to me, and something that I have the time to go do it, and things aren't, distracting me.
Awesome. Let's move on to our fan submitted questions from our Tumblr. Meettheburu.tumblr.com. First one is not so much a question, but a message of praise from Taffy. Taffy says, thanks for being a constant and long-time contributor to this fucked up little sub-fandom of ours. Love, Taffy.
Aw,
Aw.
Taffy, you're a sweetie, Taffy. You should go and draw us some more Pasta-chan.
All right. Our next question comes to us from Anonymous. Anonymous said, what is your stance on Amphibabies?
My stance on Amphibabies is slightly bent at the knee with a wide step, bit shoulder width, so you can get some extra good thrusting in there.
Oh.
Another question from Taffy. Phil, anyone who knows you personally know about you drawing Fluffy Pony?
Which is a question as to whether or not there are people in IRL that know about Fluffies. And to that I say no. In fact, I never really talked about MLP with people around me, so as far as they're concerned, I'm a fairly normal person, which is a huge lie.
How's it feel to lie to everybody, Phil?
I am so closeted, I'm practically a pair of shoes.
No. Nasser Sixer said, Phil, if I made a sequel to the Q-tip method, would you do a GIF for that too? And tongue emoticon.
I would say to him, please, Mr. Nasty, please. I would absolutely draw one. Hopefully he'd make something in there that could be translated to visual pretty easily. But yeah, I would definitely put my effort towards it. I like his stories. Keep making stories, Nasser.
Our next question comes from Anonymous. What do you smoke to come up with some of your ideas? Seriously, a sober mind doesn't think up thumb fluffies.
Well, what you do is you get some wrapping paper and you put in a little bit of marinara sauce and you dump some oregano in there and a little bit of Parmesan. You roll it up tight and you let it on fire. Then you shove it into your nasal cavity. It's great. No, actually, I don't smoke or really do any of that stuff. I just have a very strange sense of humor, and a lot of the ideas are either adapted or just come up in conversation with other really strange people.
In the 90s, we called that being high on life.
The oregano thing is called getting pizza faced.
Oh.
You're giving the kids ideas, Phil.
Oh my.
Oh no. Our next question comes from Kibbles. He asks, if I were an ice cream cone, describe how you'd eat me.
Well, Kibbles, I'm glad you asked. If you were an ice cream cone, I would bite off a little of the tip and then suck you slowly through the little hole in the bottom.
Oh.
Okay, then. Speaking of ice cream, Anonymous asks, if Fluffies were an ice cream, what flavor or breed would you eat?
I would eat the mint chocolate chip ice cream that BDB did a picture of because it looked delicious and adorable.
Aw.
No. Hugging boxing the ice cream.
Fluffy love tongue huggies, which sounds really wrong now that I think about it.
Hugging box.
Hugging box. Alrighty, do you have any last words of wisdom for the Booru?
My last words of wisdom to the Buru are draw things that interest you, and you know, don't get too offended if people try to start shit in the comments. I understand that I understand that there's a lot of drama about people posting this, that, or the other thing and trying to control content. I just say try to enjoy yourself. This is a website. It's not going to be around forever. You're here to enjoy yourself and make sure that you're doing something fun.
Alrighty, Phil. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate your cooperation and our ongoing effort to meet some of the content creators of the Booru, and we hope that you gain some more fans today. I've been
Thanks.
Weggies.
I've been Takenoko.
Thanks for watching.
Can you take these handcuffs off me now?
Sure.